Hey there, and welcome to That Independent Streak. I'm your host, Wendy Campbell, and you, my dear, are in the right place. This is where we come together to talk about all the things: health, wellness, travel. We talk about relationships, falling down, getting back up again. We talk about business. We talk about starting over. We talk about the end game. We talk about all the things because I think all the things are important. I think the communication and the conversation are integral to who we are as Americans. So I believe in storytelling, and I believe that we all have a story to tell. Now, that said, I had recorded an intro to today's guest within the podcast, thinking that I would spare you the blather of me talking. But instead, the world changed this week, and I have some things to say. And I'm hoping that you'll indulge me in my things because I think it's really important. I think from my heart, this is a really important topic and always has been very core to who I am. So, witnessing what happened to Charlie Kirk this week, a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people have seen it. A lot of people are very adamant in their position, one way or the other, about why and how that happened. What I think is important is how we talk to each other and how we communicate post this situation. Now, I have read and seen a lot of things and heard a lot of things that I am beyond appalled about. I am shocked, I am hurt, and I'm horrified that this is the world that my grandchildren are growing up in. I don't think at any point we should celebrate anybody's murder. And I've seen arguments back and forth. Well, we didn't celebrate this person's murder, or we didn't take care of this person, and we didn't do this, and this person was terrible because they believed this, and that person it was okay because they believed that. I think that's all BS. Like, we are better than that. We're human beings, and we're American human beings, which means at the core of the very foundation of who we are is freedom of speech and debate. And so I think we need to get back to a place where, one, we recognize that life is really important. Everybody's life, not just yours, not just the people you agree with, but everyone. It's what makes us different. Now, you can get me on a speech about, the people who he approved this, and so that relates to that, and I'm going to call BS on all of it. Either you're a good human being and we don't murder, or you're in another camp, and I'm really terrified for the direction of this entire planet. I think it's important that as human beings, we stop the discourse. We sit down and we communicate again. I've challenged myself over the weekend and over the last few days to engage with posts that I don't agree with friends that I do love. And the reason I'm doing that is not to troll my people. I love my people. I think highly of my people. But I think the only way that we reverse the direction that we're on is when we start talking to one another again. So I challenge you to get into your community, to talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, get on social media. Be careful about the debates on social media because it's really easy to get on there and get nasty. But if you open with a pure heart, a pure desire to understand one another and maybe make the world a better place by communicating and remembering that not everything is black and white, not everything is Nazi Germany, not everything is sunshine and roses, and really have true communication again, I think we have a chance to come through this, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take those of us who know who we are, who are strong in our opinions and our convictions, and those of us who are not afraid to speak up, because it's time that we start speaking up and remembering what this American project is and where it's going. So that said, to today's guest. Now, she's a great soul. I say that about everybody, but I really do enjoy all these storytellers coming in and sharing their stories with me. She is the original Phoenix. You want to talk about having it all and then losing it all and building it back up again and keeping a great attitude about it while also helping people. She's your girl. She does amazing things in Texas, and I'm excited to bring her to you today. So, LB Thomas. Let's get started. So I am excited to talk to you because you've got so much going on. And I, was reading through some of the things that you're doing, and I knew this would be a great conversation simply because there's no way you can do all the things that you're doing without amazing energy. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
But you are a life coach, a keynote speaker, founder of Not on Our Watch Texas, author in Pieces of Purpose, a founder and president of Texas Women in Business. You do retreats, you do mindset resetting, you do all the great things. And I think at this point in time, and do you go by Lisa Beth or do you go by LB?
I go by LB.
Okay, LB Thomas. I think at this point in time, especially in the world, there's a lot of women, especially in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, who are all struggling to kind of find their step in life. The economy is not always great. They're single moms. Some of them are finding out that they're not in great relationships, so they're ending their relationships and moving on, but they're working two jobs and raising kids. There's a lot of women who are really struggling to find their step. And I think that the ability to look back at someone who has been through that, who has survived through that, and has thrived through that is a really beneficial kind of place to start. But I do want to get into all of the things that you're doing because I am super interested in all of it. So
Well, now I'm exhausted as
I
you
know,
read everything.
don't be
Yeah,
exhausted.
no, it's like,
We'll just call it here. It'll be great.
let me go take a nap. I'll come right back.
Exactly. Hang on. Hang on. Give me some more coffee. But I guess let's start with your story because I think it's important for everyone to understand exactly what you did come through in order to understand where we're going and how to get to the next steps.
You got it. Um, the easiest place to start is that I had an ad agency for about 20 years in Austin. And we had the iconic Austin businesses, Amy's Ice Creams and Manja Pizza. And anybody that's in Austin knows, Waterloo and Freebirds, all that. And we also had a production company side. And so working with Sandra Bullock and Robert Rodriguez and, I would do red carpet junkets. And so it was awesome. The only problem, and I have three amazing children, and when I say that, we all say our children are amazing. They really are lovely, amazing, and have stood by me through all of this. The only issue I had was that I married, my business partner was my husband.
Mhm.
And I joke when I talk to women's groups that I wanted to marry so badly. I'm married so badly. And like half the women go, yeah, I did
Yeah.
that a couple times,
Yeah.
I'm like, I know, me
Yeah.
too. And I knew this is one of those, and I know your 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 audience gets it. I knew before we got married I shouldn't marry him.
Mhm.
I knew I saw the red flags. I can change him. He's just going through stress, all the BS we tell ourselves, and I did it. And about 10 years into it, I would guess, I just like, I can't take it anymore. The financial, the abuse, the verbal abuse, the physical. And when I say financial abuse, I'm an exaggerator, but I'm not exaggerating. He could go to the national championship, right? He could go
Mhm.
fishing, he could do that. One day he was going to get Freebird's burritos. And I said, oh, would you get some avocado for me? Well, that's 25 cents extra. I know. Will you get me? I would love some. He didn't. It was 25 cents extra. So weird games like that.
Right.
So I finally was like, I'm done. I finally just, I couldn't do it anymore. And so we were going through the divorce and I was keeping the business and the house and paying him, of course, but keeping all the things, all the clients we got your back, we're good. And then during the divorce, it came out to light that even as a bank president in his past, he didn't file 3 years of our personal taxes.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm not talking like the year before taxes. I'm
Mhm.
talking 9, 10, 11, 12 years prior.
Mhm.
He disagreed with the number. So, and I'd signed him. I thought, we were going. And so it's interest and penalties daily.
Mhm.
And he then pleaded hardship with the IRS because I was keeping the business. So the IRS came after me. I'm not mad at the IRS. We didn't pay our tax. We didn't file our taxes.
Right.
I tried to work with them. I tried to do all these things. Anyway, it came down to in a 3.5 month period from May to August 17th, I lost my home, I lost my business, and my mom died.
Ugh.
3.5 months. Now, luckily, My oldest was married, living in San Antonio, my daughter and her husband, and my other two were up at Texas Tech. So they weren't in the process of losing, but they knew what was going
Mm-hmm.
on. Um, but here's the thing, Wendy, and you probably would relate to this. I didn't want anybody to know because my identity was my business.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the world, I was extremely successful. I had couple multi-million, like a $2 to $3 million ad agency. You know, I was red carpet junkets. I was doing all these things. Started Texas Women in Business, and I know they held me in a certain light because I
Mm-hmm.
started this, and now we have chapters around the state. Some of my really good friends knew it, and my family knew it, but everybody else, I'd be like, oh, I'm great.
Mm-hmm.
No, things are good. I would put on that mask and just lie through my teeth that everything was okay while I was literally falling apart,
Mm-hmm.
just falling apart. So,
When you're in that situation, and I've done it too, obviously going through bad relationships in the public eye is never fun. But we're in a weird world where you almost have to, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but there is perception, and that perception is easily broken. And when your identity is tied to that external face, it's really difficult to be honest.
yeah, completely. A very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, is the founder of Austin Women Magazine. And during this time frame, she said, let's go to Galveston. Let's go to my house in Galveston. I was like, the other thing, I was homeless for 6 months.
Ugh.
I'm like, I'm homeless. I don't have any money. I literally would go through pockets of things and trying to find anything. And she said, well, eat what's in the refrigerator. We'll drink what's in the pantry. We won't, let's just go and get you away. And so finally I was like, okay. So Saturday night, I say to her, I want to go down to the beach tomorrow at sunrise and talk to God because I'm pissed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pissed at God. I am like, you son of a, I mean, I was so mad. So I go down to the beach and I'm sitting on the beach and the sun's coming up and I'm literally like, how dare you? Why? You could snap your fingers and fix this. There could be a miracle like this, right? You did manna from heaven. You parted the Red Sea, water to wine, which would have been really, I would have loved that miracle at that
Mm-hmm.
time,
Yeah, no
right?
doubt.
Having had that, just turn on my faucet and because I was drinking the really cheap stuff because I didn't
Yeah,
have any money.
right. A little
Um,
bit of self-soothing is important.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, but while I was sitting there, I looked out at the water and I went, oh, maybe a wallet washed up, or maybe there's a diamond bracelet and somebody lost a ring. So I got up and I thought, that's going to be my miracle. He's going to bring some money up on the shore. So I start walking down the shore. I start looking in the water. I'm lifting up seaweed. About a half an hour later, I stood there and I said out loud, God, show me the treasure on the beach. And as clear as day, I never heard it before and I've never heard it since. I heard, oh, LisaBeth, you are the treasure on the beach.
Mm. I love
And
that.
yeah, and I turned around because I thought, because I said it out loud. Was that somebody behind me? And I, it just kind of blew me away. I didn't really understand it at the time because I had no self-worth, self-esteem, no confidence, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because people would say to me, why didn't you go get more business? I couldn't. I didn't have it in me. I didn't have the drive, the energy, the heart. And I knew whatever money I brought in from a new client, the IRS would go, thank you, and take it
Mm-hmm.
that way. I
Right.
wasn't going to do that to somebody. So I I went back and told Melinda what happened, and I was like, I'm not sure what that means because again, my head was completely messed up. So I go to Texas Women in Business Austin holiday luncheon, and I don't remember why I was there. I'm the founding president, and this was a couple of years later, and I don't remember if I was supposed to introduce somebody. I don't remember what the point was. So I go to the luncheon and I walk in and my face is great. Everything's great because I don't want anybody to know because I know
Right.
they have me on a pedestal. I'm LB. And a friend of mine came up to me, Sharon Bacon, and said, what's wrong? And I said, nothing. It's great. She was, you're lying. I said, no, I'm not. I'm great. She was, your eyes are dead. You're lying. And I
Ouch.
went, no, 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 you're crazy, you're silly. So I
Mm-hmm.
go up on stage and I look out at the 200 women looking at me like, is she gonna be funny? What's she gonna do? What's she gonna say? And I just said, I have something to tell you. And I just verbally vomited the last 6, 8 months of my life, what had happened. And while I'm doing it, Wendy, I'm thinking, here comes the judgment. It's a
Hmm.
bunch of ladies. Here comes the judgment. And when I got done, you could hear a pin drop. And I went, well, there it is. There it is. And then the applause started. And then I got a standing ovation. And it was a long standing ovation. Not as long as Pope Leo when he became the Pope,
Sure,
but it
sure,
was a
sure.
good one. Yeah, his was pretty spectacular. Um, but it was long enough for me to dry my tears. And here's to go to your point, what you brought up. When I walked off stage, there was a line of women down the wall to talk to me.
Hmm.
I have an eating disorder because I'm so stressed. I want to divorce my husband. I have to file bankruptcy. I can't tell anybody. All these women were hiding and they said, I have to wear a mask. I can't tell anybody. But if you, LB, can get on a stage and tell and start the process to walk through it, I can do it. And that's when I realized how important it is for us to tell our story because Facebook, Instagram, we only most of the time post the great things that are going on.
Right.
But when we tell our story, first of all, it gives you freedom because you're not hiding anymore, but it gives others the freedom, women the freedom to go, okay, it's time for me to be real.
Hmm. But it
And that
also
was
gives other
huge.
the opportunity, it gives other people the opportunity to help, where natively they wouldn't because they think you're great. Everything's great. Why
Yeah.
would they bother?
Yeah.
Wow.
I see my sister's dog is making a photo. Yeah. She left and the dog's
Photobomb.
like wandering, looking. It's
That's
hilarious.
awesome.
But what I discovered is then when I finally told my story, I was telling it to anybody that would listen, and those that didn't want to listen, I told it. But I told it from victim. You know what he did to me? You know what he didn't do? You know what happened with the IRS? I was blaming everybody else, and it was is I kept it out there.
Hmm.
And one day I was on the phone talking to somebody, doing my story, and all of a sudden I went, "Oh, as long as I keep doing it this way, I'm going to stay stuck. I'm going to stay the victim."
Hmm.
So I said, on the phone call, I said, hold on a second. Let me tell you my part of this. Let me take some accountability. I never asked about did he send him in? I never looked at the numbers. I never looked if we paid. Why didn't I stand up for myself? I didn't stand up for myself. And so then I started really coming up with all the things that I hadn't done in the marriage and in the business and all
Right.
those other things. And that all of a sudden I went from victim to victor. Like, okay, instead of somebody pulling strings, I was now pulling the strings. And that made all the difference for me.
I think that's great. There are a lot of women I speak to who, still live in that my ex-husband did this, my ex-husband did that. And I think
Right.
that they've almost made that their identity, the victim identity. But also they think that they're not. They think that they've taken the other side and that they've moved on. But to relive that story and to retell that story in that pain, I think is the keynote. I think that kind of keeps you trapped.
It does. It keeps you stuck in that story.
Hmm.
I facilitate once a month a program called Discovery in Austin. And every time we do an exercise called Fear Behind the Trap.
Hmm.
And 99.9% of the time, it's again, I'll say, what do you want for your heart? What do you want for you? And it's they, he, and again, it's everything out there. And I'm like, can you control them? No, you can only control yourself. So let's go back. Let's just talk about your heart. And it takes a long time to get people to focus on them and not blaming. And
Right.
again, once you make that shift, you now have control. Because right now you're giving your control to everybody else
Hmm. Well, I think it's the fear of
when you
responsibility
keep it
too.
out there.
There's this fear of if I had a
Mhm.
participating part in this, then I am complicit. So I'm at fault. And if I'm at fault, then he can't be at fault, which is limiting, a little bit limiting.
Yeah. But you can both be at fault.
Absolutely.
You can totally both be at fault. But yeah, and I know it's really hard to admit when we're wrong. I mean, I I get that 100%, but
Hmm.
sometimes we're wrong. And it doesn't mean that we're wrong. Like for me, I again, I had my fear, my self-worthiness. my not being good enough. All these things came up for me. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. That was just a tape that was going on in the back of my head. I just didn't even know it. But once I went, oh, that's what's been driving me. That's what's keeping me saying things I are not speaking up or whatever it was.
Hmm.
It didn't make me wrong. I just didn't even realize that was a tape that was going on in the back of my head.
Right.
And once I acknowledged what my fears were, what was holding me back, because you have to acknowledge, that you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. You have to acknowledge it and then go, okay, that's what it is.
Hmm.
I never thought I was wrong when I took accountability. I never even put that label on me. I went, oh, that makes sense.
Hmm.
That makes sense why this happened, why he did, why I did. So I think it's when people, women really say, I'm sick of this. I don't want to be like this anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which is, it is scary because it is a bit of an ego death. So you're in the conference and you've told your story and you've got the line of women. At what point did it occur to you that you could help them back, that you could give them more and you could help guide them through that as well?
When I really started looking at what were my things that were holding me back,
Hmm.
because I felt like, because people would say to me, you need to get up and speak about this. And I said, yeah, but I don't know the other side yet.
Hmm.
I don't want to get up and just tell this and then be like, and I don't know the answer, so I'm going to walk away.
Right,
It's
right.
like, I have to walk through it. I have to get to the other side so I understand. And how I got to the other side was a couple things. One was taking accountability. Two, this was a really big one. Again, one day I was doing something and I made a mistake and I went, God, you idiot. And it was the first time I believe I'd actually heard myself call myself an idiot. And then I went, wow, do I say that all the time? And then I would catch myself that I was stupid and I would hear things that my ex had told me. And I thought that can't be helpful with this self-worth and lack of self-esteem, you know?
Right.
'Cause we beat ourselves up more than we do anybody else. I mean, I would
Hmm.
never say that. I've never said those to my children. I would never say that to anybody, but I would say them to me. But I wasn't even aware of it. So what I did is I started listening. I wasn't great at it at first because it's like a muscle. You got to practice it, but I
Right.
started listening. And when I heard myself call myself stupid or dumb or an idiot or whatever, um, I would go, oh, I would stop myself and I would turn my inner critic into my inner cheerleader. I would immediately go, you're not dumb. You just don't know how to do it yet.
Hmm.
I mean, I would just flip it. So I would catch myself and give me a positive. Then it got to the point where I would not very often, but say you're dumb or whatever. And I would go, "Pfft," like, I know that's not true. And I can honestly say, I do not remember the last time I called myself a name.
That's
My,
great.
I yeah, and again, I'm an exaggerator, but I cannot remember the last time I called myself stupid or dumb. And I know that was huge. And it wasn't easy to do. But again, how can you move forward and feel good about yourself when you're telling yourself you're a failure?
Hmm.
And that's what I was doing, especially during that time period. I failed at everything. I failed at another marriage. I failed at my business. I lost my home. I was, you check, check, check.
Right.
So I had to really make a decision that I only one that could fix me was me, you
Hmm.
know, the only
And I
one.
think in that, like, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm gonna stop talking poorly to myself. I'm gonna talk to myself better. I'm gonna be my best champion, my best cheerleader. But I think there's an action required in that too, to move you forward through it, so that you
Mhm.
believe it because you're doing the actions and the action I think is the follow through, where you really start to believe it. So what kind of actions were you taking in those early steps to kind of really move you past the self-limiting beliefs and into a place of strength and really growth?
I and I'm a firm believer in coaches and therapists and people again. So when I said, you can only fix yourself,
Right.
but sometimes, like you were just saying, we get so focused and we're so in that space. It's really nice sometimes it's really great to have other people give you nuggets of ideas to try. So I am
Hmm.
completely like, if you're stuck, find a great coach. I'm saying this to the audience,
Hmm.
someone that will give you things that will give you those aha moments that you can go, wow, that makes sense. Okay. And so it was stop talking negative to myself. It was that accountability. It was focused on one of the other ones was speaking up for myself. That was a
Hmm.
big one. And here's my example. So I've been with David for, we're coming on 10 years. And the first couple of years, I have no idea why he stayed with me because I was a hot mess. I accused him of everything my exes did. I was awful.
Hmm.
And again, I don't know why he stuck with me. And one day, and again, he never did any of those things, but I was just assuming he was. So one day I was at his house waiting for him and he came home and I don't know what happened. And we rarely, rarely argue or fight, but something happened. And I said to myself before he walked in the door, I'm just not going to say anything. I don't want to cause any problems. Well, who is that? That was me.
Hmm.
Don't make waves. Don't speak up. Don't do
Hmm.
anything. And I said, who's it going to hurt if I don't? Me. It's time for me to be me. So he walked in the door and I said, hello, how are you? And I said, you know what? I need to share this with you. When you said this, and again, I don't remember what it was. And it was the first time that I remember consciously saying, I am going to speak my truth and be unapologetically myself. And I thought, and I said to him, I'm going to say what's on my heart. And if you don't like it, that's okay. And maybe you're not my person, and that's okay.
Hmm.
And I may never find my person, but that's okay. But it's time for me at 55 years old to be myself and to be me and stop pretending.
Hmm.
Because, when you're in a relationship and you're pretending the whole time, the person doesn't even know who you are.
Right. Right. But in order to be at that point where you can talk your truth and really get there in a relationship, you have to find out who you are.
Right.
So you have to let go of what you think needs to be and who you think you should be and who you think they want you to be in order to start developing and hearing your own truth. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of women. I think
It
a
what
lot,
it is hard. And I know you talk to a lot of women. Do you come against across this a lot?
I think, in a lot of situations, the women I talk to have been to the other side of it. So yes, but to that, they've all been there. They've all been in that situation where they're trying to define who they are and to understand, their opportunities for growth and if they actually can grow. Some people honestly believe that they have to stay in that place because that's what their bucket is and that this is what they're allowed to be and it's I think an important conversation because it allows them to understand that they don't and that there is another opportunity to grow on the other side. It's a scary place because if you don't know what's on the other side and you haven't defined it for yourself, you're kind of at the mercy of other people guiding you to another version that isn't you, right?
Right.
So it's a tricky place to be where the devil is safer, you want to stay home and in your little bubble and be safe in that, but I think it does take courage and to let go of fear is not always the easiest thing to do.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's more comfortable to stay in our pain.
Right. Right. Because and you've defined yourself in the pain.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
and I want to I think one of the reasons I created the channel is to develop an opportunity for women to speak through these kind of things because the older you get and you're in a great place because you create networks, you create that tribe, right? But a
Hmm.
lot of women don't necessarily get to that tribe. So they're isolated, they're limited in their ability to reach out and connect with other people, or they're shy, or they're scared, or whatever the case may be. And I think, I wanted to create an opportunity for people to hear the conversation, even if they're not getting out of their comfort zone, right? Even if they're staying in their safe space, so that they know that there are people out there who are trying to connect, who are trying to help them grow and evolve and get to that great place. I think everyone deserves to live their best life. So part of that is connecting with your tribe to get you there.
Yeah, and with a lot of your guests too, I think like I had mentioned earlier, if someone's listening and there's a nugget that they can take and go, "Oh, let me try that."
Hmm.
Let me just because the number one fear is the fear of the unknown. And so it's like I'm afraid to walk through this fire because I don't know what's going to be on the other side. And a lot of times when I've talked to women, they're surprised when they get to the other side of the fire. They're like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But
Hmm.
we do so many what ifs, that we say, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And my daughter did that one day. She called me and she was like, Mom, it was something about a job. Well, what if this happens? And then what if he says this? And then what if that happens? And I go, what if a comet, an asteroid hits the planet tonight? And she was, that's silly. And I go, is it? I go, you're just what ifing. And I
Hmm.
said, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. And I said, more like when you wake up, those what ifs aren't even going to occur.
Hmm.
There's so many times we lose sleep thinking, oh my God, what if, what if? Then you wake up and it's gone. You
Right.
know,
And you don't
it's,
want to lose the opportunity. You don't want to lose the moment. So it's important to kind of grab onto those moments when they come. If you're still talking about, the what ifs, you're going to lose the moment.
yeah,
It's scary. It's scary. You
yeah,
mentioned you believe in life coaches, and I do too. I think it's important to have good mentors. And I'm always looking for good mentors, but I think there are a lot of people in the world that are life coaches now. If you were to recommend for someone to go find a life coach, what are the things that they should look for? What are the things that they should key into as far as finding someone, not just who, like, you don't want an echo chamber. You want somebody who's going to challenge you to grow. But what would you recommend people look for when they look for a life coach?
I, this probably is going to be sound really weird to somebody. I would recommend somebody that's gone through some issues and that have learned some steps.
Hmm.
And it can be anything. It could be a divorce. It could be bang. It could be losing a parent, a caregiver. Whatever it is. Because I think I've met life coaches, and let's just be real clear. How many? There's so many coaches out there that sometimes it felt like it was the new Mary Kay.
Right.
We
Exactly.
Yeah, yesterday I was, a banker, but today I'm a life coach. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, um,
I'm 28 years old and I haven't done anything, but I'm a life coach.
but I'm a life coach. Exactly. And my son-in-law at one point in time was in the army, and he called me one day and he said, I'm thinking about becoming what's a preacher in the army? Um,
A chaplain?
Thank you. A chaplain. He goes, I'm thinking about becoming a chaplain. I was like, wow, Hugh, that'd be amazing. And he said, oh, but there's no way. I've been in jail. I've got tattoos. I did this. I've been arrested. He went down this list. And I said, what better human being to be a chaplain that
Right.
someone could, yeah, that these guys could go, good, you get me.
Hmm.
You relate to me.
Hmm.
Because I've met coaches that have lived in literally, and God bless them, they've lived in a wonderful bubble of finances and a great marriage and nothing's gone wrong. And I don't know how you can have empathy for me. And I'm not saying that they don't. So that would be my recommendation. First of all, is find out what their story is and also talk to some of their, find out who they've coached and see
Hmm.
how they've done. And I am also a firm believer as when someone says, well, I've been with this life coach for 12 years, I'm like, oh, okay. How's it going? Well, I'm still dealing with the loss of my mom. Maybe it's time to find a new life coach,
Yeah. There should be
right?
some growth. There should
Yeah,
be
there
some
should be something
evolving.
in there. And I think I always want to tell people it's not about the money for the coach.
Hmm.
It's you. You may just dig in and find your answer and go, holy cow, I had no idea, and move on.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. So when people come to you, and I'm sure you have a process. What is your process when, as far as leading them through development? Do you have a process that you've developed? Are there steps that you tend to look at?
One of the first things I do is ask them what is something that traps them? What is something that just gets their goat, that just socks them in the, that sets off those triggers?
Mhm.
And it's interesting because when they share 'em, some of them I may agree with, some of them I don't. Like for example, let's say somebody says, I tell my kids every day to put the dishes in the dishwasher, and I come home and the dishes are in the sink, and I could just, are you kidding me? Right? And I make sure that they know it's the situation or behavior, it's not the person. So it's not the teenagers, it's that they don't put the dishes in the dishwasher.
Right.
Well, so then I have them identify what is the fear that you think you're feeling with that? And they'll name some presenting fear, like fear of not being a good mom or fear of whatever. And so then I have them go through, and I have a course called Outwitting Fear, um, that I have them step through it. And I go, okay, so what if you aren't a good mom? What would happen? And then they answer, okay, well, and then what would happen? Where would that leave you? What does that do to your heart? And we go down this kind of a whack-a-mole kind of thing, go down. And let me give you a really great, I'll give you a better example. I was getting my hair done, the woman who was highlighting my hair, and she got a text while she was doing it, and she slammed her phone down. I was like, whoa, what's going on? She said, I hate that client. She calls me always at the last minute, canceling her appointment and wants to reschedule at night or on the weekends when it's my time. Good, it just drives me crazy. And I said, well, why don't you fire her? She said, oh, I can't fire her. I need the money. That's the fear. I
Hmm.
need the money,
Right.
right? And I said, well, what would happen if you fired her? What would happen? She said, well, because I need the money, I told my kids and my husband that I would pay for summer camp and I wouldn't have the money for summer camp. I said, okay, so where would that leave you? What would happen if your kids didn't go to summer camp? Well, they'd stay home, they'd be on their iPads all day, everybody would be mad. Okay, well, what would that do to your heart? Well, it'd break it. I'd feel horrible. I feel bad that I let my family down. Okay, well, what if you let your family down? Well, if I let them down, maybe they won't love me, or my husband will want to leave me. And then she stopped and she looked at me in the mirror and went, it's not about the money. It's about providing, and she
Hmm.
just went, oh my God, I never even thought of that.
Hmm.
And she goes, so much of what I do, people pleasing, is to make sure everybody loves me. And I was like, yeah. So I went and processed. She came back after to wash my hair and said, well, I fired that client. And I went, oh,
Good.
well, I didn't, okay. I didn't mean, I didn't know you were going to do it that fast. She goes, I let her go, said, it's just not going to work out. And she said, when I hung up the phone, I got two other calls that needed more and were very accommodating. I said, so you made space for what you really wanted. But it was just walking through from the presenting fear down to the core fear, because once we get to the core fear, now we know what's
Right. Right.
driving
Oh, and
us.
I'm so glad that you said that because that's such a strange, terrifying area. The making
Yeah.
space for what you really want and letting go of what you
Mhm.
have. I think even myself, I struggle with that all the time and just, you know, admitting that that thing isn't great and staying with it because it's fine, but taking that leap to just let it go so that the better thing can come in. Um,
Yeah,
I think for me, it's terrifying. Like that,
it is.
I can't be the only one. So, like, how much hand holding do you do? How do you go about like making? I mean, there's so many ways and places where that triggers, right? And
Right.
it's
So many.
life and business and lost opportunities. Um,
One of the ones I share, two things. One, when she let go, we laughed about it because while she was doing my hair and she was talking to her, she was like this. God, I can't stand, she was clipped. And then when she came out, she was like, I let it go. And I
mhm,
said, well, you notice you went from not able to receive,
mhm,
and then when you let it go, you let it go, and you are now open,
right.
and it is scary. I had a friend of mine would not do outwitting fear. She's like, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
That's a
And I
fun
was
place
like,
to be too.
okay. Yeah. And I said, and I love you. I love you 100%. That's fine.
Right.
She said, I'm afraid to find out.
Mm.
And I said, okay, then don't do it. Don't do it. But it is a very freeing because when I figured out that mine were not being good enough and not worthy, it explained so much. It explained so much. even to the point where I called a couple of my ex-employees, my key employees, because we would put proposals together and we would make our clients millions of dollars. I mean, we had clients in, Montana, Wyoming, and international. We had clients 9 out of 10 times when we put a proposal together, I would second guess.
Mm.
I'd be like, well, maybe we should discount it a little bit more and we do a little bit more, because then they'll like us and my team would be, LB, we're going to make them a ton of money. They love, we do good work. We're really good at what we do.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then when I got down to my core fear of not being good enough, I went, that's why I was discounting proposals. I wasn't good enough. I had a discount. And now I laugh and I go, maybe I should add 10% because I'm never,
Yeah.
and I joke. But it was shocking to me how
Hmm.
it had played all around my life.
Well, and you see that with a lot of salespeople, or at least I've seen that with a lot of salespeople and a lot of people in that position. People don't grow up and say, "I want to be a salesman," right? People don't think this is my dream job. I'm going to go and I'm going to sling whatever. I slung air for a few years. I mean, whatever it is. And so that I could see where that can seed in. But how do you flip that switch? How do you, I mean, do you have to go all the way through and track it back to your, time you spent with your grandfather 35 years ago, or can you
I
move it
I don't
forward?
even I don't even know where it came from. I have no idea. Because if you met me, well, you have met me today. People will say to me,
Hmm.
you were like
Hmm.
that. You went through that phase because I'm usually outgoing. I'm lighthearted. I'm full of sunshine. That sounds egotistical, but I mean, I like being happy. I'm a
Hmm.
joyful person. And somebody said, well, where do you think that came from? And I said, it doesn't matter where it came from.
Right.
I don't really care to go back and dig up what my mom did or didn't do, or my dad did, or grandparent.
Right.
That's then. I'd rather spend all that energy figuring out how to go this way.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
one other, I was working with a gentleman, and his fear of all crazy things, the thing that triggered him was traffic.
Same.
He's like so pissed off about traffic. And I was like, really? I went through the questions with him. And I couldn't get it. I couldn't get him out of his head. And I finally stopped and I looked at him. I said, are you a failure? Have you let your family down? Would being in bed anyway, and however I asked the question, he started crying. Bottom line, he was afraid that if he was in bad traffic, get in an accident, he wouldn't be able to provide for his family. He'd be a failure and he'd let his family down. What? But he was sobbing. He was sobbing and said, I'll let him down. They won't let me. I'll have left him alone. And then he just looked at me and went, oh my, oh my. And I said, so how much of that fear is driving your actions or your inactions with your family?
Hmm.
And that's what you have to really look at. What is this making me do or not do? I did this with my sister, and she got so pissed off because she's like, all I want to do is make sure everybody's good. And she goes, I'm exhausted. I just want to make sure everybody loves me. I want to make sure, so I never say no to anything. And I'm exhausted. Yeah.
Hmm.
So now I hear her go, no,
I
I'm
know I got
not
to
going
be
to do
careful
it.
who I share this with because I want to keep
Yeah.
my people doing my things.
That's right. But she had to find her voice. And
Hmm.
so it's really powerful to get down to those core because again, we can't do anything about it if we don't acknowledge it.
Hmm.
So
And it's a scary place to go. I mean, I think,
mhm.
looking in is not always the easiest thing to do. I joke that I try to journal all the time, but I end up, going in different directions and doing things, and most of it is the sitting down and getting introspective. And maybe that's why I do the podcast because it gives me an opportunity to look within for an hour and then I can put it away and go move on, and
Yeah,
you know, it's a good thing. I think it's important though because it does change who you are and the happiness you have within your life, right? If you
right.
can identify what's setting you off, you're not afraid of it anymore.
Yeah. Because even when if something happens, I stop and I give myself like 3 to 5 seconds to go, is this me being afraid, not being good enough or not worthy? Is that it? Or do I just not know how to do that? So
Hmm.
it's a great checking point. And a lot of times it's, yeah, you're afraid of it or you don't think you're good enough to do it. I mean, that's so much of what you deal with, I'm sure, imposter syndrome all the time with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Hmm.
exactly what it is.
Interesting. So you've got this, I was rolling through your website. You've got this set up as a course on your website, correct? So
Yeah.
anyone can jump in and go and take the course. How long does it take to do the course? Just because people, people will
Mostly,
find excuses. So
yeah,
let's
yeah,
remove them.
some people can do it within an hour.
Hmm.
Um, the really nice thing about it is that you can once you've downloaded it, you could do it for anything else that's triggered you. And some people take a break and walk away, and then they come back. But it really works pretty quickly. I do this sometimes at women's conferences, and I have an hour, and I have an audience of 150 women doing this at the same time.
Hmm.
And they'll stand up and be like, I had no idea, you know?
Hmm.
And then, or I had one woman say, boy, do I need to apologize to a few people, because I just feel what was driving me.
Hmm.
And yeah, yeah, it's Outwitting Fear, outwittingfear.com. And yeah, there's a link on my website, but it's really helpful,
That
really
sounds
helpful.
amazing. Honestly, I've had chills like 4 or 5 times during this conversation just about
Yay.
that. So we know there's something there.
There
But I did
is.
want to talk to you about Not on Our Watch Texas. I think it's a
Yes.
really wonderful program, and I don't want to not have an opportunity to get some time in there. Can you tell me about it and tell everyone, what your mission is and who you're protecting and how you're going about it?
Yep. So I know my bio says founder, so I'm going to give I'm co-founder. Andrea Sparks is with me on that. And a real quick backstory, Texas Women in Business, um, for the 10-year anniversary, which would have been 2020, they asked me in 2019 if I would come back and be the president for the 10th year. And I was like, ah, that's awesome. So I went to the governor's office and said, hey, we're Texas Women in Business. We're going to have a gala, for our 10-year anniversary. We'll have a party, but what can we do that'll have an impact on the state? And that's when they said, do you know Texas is #1 in human trafficking? And I was like, well, how do I not know that? Why is that not on the news every night? I
Hmm.
used to work in the ABC station here in Austin and I'd be in the newsroom. What? And so it ended up being we're now #2. So if you heard the dates, it was 2019, 2020. The governor gave us the capital to launch. Well, then we had COVID,
Hmm.
and then the next year COVID, and then coming out of COVID. So we didn't launch until the end of 2023. But coming out of COVID, we found out that online predators, exploitation, sextortion of our kids online went up 567%.
That is an awful number.
Right. Predators go where the kids are, and kids are right
Hmm.
here. Kids are on this, kids are gaming. And so the predators figured out how to get to them even more. So we went, that's going to be our focus because human trafficking is huge and that's a big space. But this, not a lot of people were focusing on online, and they are more and more now. So
Hmm.
our mission is to bring awareness and the tools to parents and kids.
Hmm.
And not just Texas. We're saying not on our watch Texas because we started here, but now
Sure.
we've had calls from Florida, from Louisiana, and all sorts of great things. The thing is that most of the time when I do a presentation and not on our watch, people don't think it's them. It's not their kid. It's not their kid. So I start off literally saying that. I know this has nothing to do with you or your family. I get that.
Hmm.
And then I start going through the stats. And then they start kind of getting concerned. And then I go, oh, wait, and how many of your kids have one of these? Oh, every single one of them does? Well, then it is your kid.
Hmm.
1 out of 5 kids last year said they were approached by a predator online. 1 out of 5.
That is terrible.
Because they pretend that they're 16-year-old, 15-year-old girl or boy and
Hmm.
they befriend them. And we work with cybersecurity and detectives and FBI. We do panels with all of them. They said this is the #1 thing for human trafficking now. They get the kid to bite on this, and then they get him to meet them somewhere, get a personal address. But this is where it starts now. I
Well,
mean,
and
it used to be,
it's terrible. I mean, even in the last 6, 8 months, the number of posts that I'm seeing online on Facebook or wherever about children, young women are missing, it's up so much. I couldn't even give you a number. But I guess it was 2 weeks ago, I got an email from one of the sports leagues saying that they had been hacked and that there were predators that were approaching the children through the sports league app. So it is very much middle America. It's very much suburban
yeah.
America. It's very much everywhere.
Yeah, someone, they'll say, "Oh, it's not in my community." Well, your community is now worldwide
Hmm.
because you're on the internet.
Hmm.
And it, like the sports app, we were doing a panel discussion, and one of them said that an equestrian game for like 5, 6, 7-year-olds, a predator got in there and was sending bestiality pictures to
Oh my
kids.
God.
And it's like, what in the world? So there, we bring the tools. We don't need to do any information. In other words, there are resources out there. The
Hmm.
National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Hmm.
There's so many great resources. So we're not recreating. What we're
Right.
doing is we're pointing. We're saying, hey, if this is happening, go here. But here are the tools. This is what you should do. And this is how parents should talk to their kids. One of my favorite things, one of the detectives had said, Brandon Poor said, have the conversation with your child that whatever is happening in your life, I've got your back. If
Hmm.
you're embarrassed, if it's in the middle of the night, if you feel like I'm going to be mad, I won't. I'm here to help you. And he said, and then when the kid comes to you and tells you, don't freak out because now you've just we're
Yeah.
hypocritical and the kid gets scared and I'm not going to tell you.
Right.
He said, listen, help, then go to your bedroom closet, scream, punch, cry, and then come back out. But don't do it in front of the kid. And a mom whose daughter committed suicide from sextortion said that I think the best line ever. She said, we tell our kids, don't. And she said, because then they won't tell you because they went against what you said.
Hmm.
She said, I wish I would have said to my daughter, don't. But if you do, come to me.
Hmm.
I'll help you. And I went, man, what a brilliant statement. And that's the biggest thing they say kids are afraid to talk to the parents. So our message to parents is it's never too late. Go talk to your kids and say, hey, I'm here. I really am here. And so that they, in the middle of the night, get sextortion or something bullied and they want to kill themselves, come talk to me. Um, One of the things that we're most very excited about, and I know you saw that on the website, is that we have partnered with the Girl Scouts. And right now, a patch is being embroidered and curriculum, a not on our watch curriculum and patch, which will be launching this fall to up to 1 million girls.
Oh, that's
So the
great.
beauty of it is, I know, I'm so excited. The beauty of it is the true leader won't be leading it, the girls have to teach it. So the girls will have to teach their troop, so they have to learn it, not
Hmm.
just listen.
Hmm.
And we've heard from the Girl Scouts, this is going to be a major push on their part because it affects every girl.
Hmm.
So we're really, really proud that that's going to happen. And I can't wait to get the first patch.
Oh, that is
So
so amazing. I,
yeah,
I, got chills again on that one. I
yeah,
think, I think, you know, it is so scary. And I think as a parent, you want to protect your child, so you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to put them in a position to learn about it because then you have to show them that the world is ugly. But I think, to your point, it's much easier to have that ugly conversation than it is to lose a child. And their friends too. Sometimes they'll talk to their friends because you never know what conversation you have and the ripple effect it has on everyone else. But I think it's an amazing project that you guys
that,
have there.
well, and I love that you said that because how many times the kids will listen to their friends before they'll listen to us? They'll
Absolutely.
hear us, but they really listen to their friends. And so I love the idea of a girl saying, I've been talking to this guy and he wants to meet. And the Girl Scout girlfriend says, that's maybe not a good idea. You
Hmm.
know, maybe
Hmm.
not. One of the tricks that I thought was brilliant, most of the time, these are just photos and things that they'll be exchanging photos when they're talking to, they think it's a 15-year-old girl or guy and it's a 55-year-old man out of
Hmm.
Nigeria.
Gross.
The detective said, ask to FaceTime. You
Hmm.
can't hide in FaceTime. And he said,
Hmm.
and the minute that person says, I don't know how, they're lying, it's
Hmm.
bullshit,
Hmm.
get off.
Hmm.
Because every kid knows how to FaceTime. He said, because you can't hide from FaceTime. And I was like,
Absolutely.
brilliant tip, brilliant
That's a
tip.
great tip for online dating too. I just want to throw
Yeah.
that out there.
Yeah. Oh my
A
God.
lot of women are, having gone through the horrible process of online dating myself, there's a lot of scammers out there. There's a lot of misinformation and liars, and fastest way to end it is to ask for a FaceTime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah,
Oh,
so and anybody can go to notonourwatch, TX, notonourwatchtx.com for information. If you want to reach out to me and say, hey, we'd like to have a panel discussion, because again, we bring your experts in your community. We'll bring in detectives and cyber and FBI, but also we'll bring in your local people so that they know who they can talk to locally.
hmm.
And we'd love to help. And of course, as a nonprofit, we'd love donations. We're always thrilled with that and we're just building, building, building. So we went from an idea to we're getting a lot of traction. I spent some time in DC advocating for some bills. Two of the bills we advocated for at the Capitol here in Texas, we were invited to be a part of the bill signing that got passed, and so that was really cool to be a part of that. So a lot going on.
Oh,
So
no, it's beautiful. I think it's a great trajectory too, because it's something to build from,
mhm.
and it can only get bigger. And it's such an important cause that I'm so excited to see what you do with it. I think it's great.
Thank you. Well, and people, we remind ourselves we're grassroots. MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, started with a mom, you
Hmm.
know, and so we call ourselves mama bears. We're just a bunch of mama bears saying we got to do something to help our kids because
Hmm.
we can't protect against what we're not aware of.
Right.
So we have to make people aware. And again, it's scary, but like I love what you said. It rather have that scary conversation than losing a child.
Hmm.
And a gentleman, Brian Montgomery out of Mississippi, lost a son to sextortion in 3.5 hours. And he said, I never knew. I never knew. He said, if somebody would have told me that this could happen, I would have had that conversation with my son, but I didn't even know.
Well, and
And
that's
so,
a great point too. It's not just girls; it is boys.
oh,
Boys are
boys are
absolutely important in the
boys,
conversation.
16-year-old boys, teenage boys are the target for sextortion.
Mm,
And what I love that Brian said about his son is he said, I'm not mad that my son sent a video. He's a 16-year-old boy. Anybody that has 16-year-old boys or was a 16-year-old boy or dated a 16-year-old boy knows what they're thinking. He
right.
said he was just being a kid thinking he was talking to a girl. It was a gentleman out of Nigeria. And the minute he sent the video, he got the text and they have the transcript from the text. He said, send me $1,000 or I'm going to send this to everybody in your school. And the kid was like, I don't have $1,000. The guy said, go get it from your parents, steal it. I can't steal money from my parents. And then he said, well, too bad. I'm going to send, you know what? I'm going to send this video to your mom. And that was the trigger that
Oh,
so horrified. He went downstairs to the gun safe, went back upstairs and shot himself because he didn't want his mom to see.
that's
So
awful. I
that's what
can't
Brian
even.
said. I wish I would have known.
To kids everywhere, I'd rather see the picture than. I mean, I can't even. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
heartbreaking.
it is.
Heartbreaking.
But thank you for asking about it because it's good stuff. We're
I
really
think it's
proud
a
of it.
great project. It is something that being in Colorado, we've got a lot of roadways that unfortunately elicit a lot of trafficking as well, and so it's a
Too.
topic that I've been concerned about for a while. But I'm glad that, even in Texas, we've got voices that are out there trying to help the
Yeah.
kids, and
Yeah, well, we'll come to Colorado. We'll go anywhere.
awesome.
And we're going to change it to not on our watch world so we can still be now and drop Texas because we've been to Louisiana, we're going to Florida, we've been to Mississippi, we've been up in Oklahoma. So,
I love it.
yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have? I know I actually have a whole lot of questions that we could spend another 4 hours here, but is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to throw out
No,
there today?
no,
Okay,
I think we're good.
perfect. Well, then let's tell everyone how to find you and how to find your resources so that they can reach out to you if they're looking for a coach. They can reach out to you. You do retreats too. That was the other thing I wanted to talk to you
I
about.
know they're so much fun. We dig in, but we have a really good time and we have some soul searching time. We have getting down the bottom of the fear. We walk through a bunch of exercises, steps that they can take, and of course, mix in fun and wine. Who
And
can't
wine.
have a retreat without wine, right?
You are my people. Yes.
And the good news is I'm not homeless anymore, so it's
Oh,
not cheap
yay.
ass wine. It's the good stuff.
I
And
mean,
and I have to say, walking through this, yes, I do have something else to say. Walking through what I walked through and the steps I took, that a lot of it was on my own, but again, great nuggets from people that I would reach out to and say, "Hey, what do I need to do?" And I would take some, spit them out because they weren't working for me, but others, I've never been happier, more profitable and a better relationship, healthier, because I had to, like I said, I had made the decision I didn't want to be there anymore. So I want to leave that this was totally worth it, just totally worth it. So if somebody is struggling saying, I don't want to, I don't, yeah, you do it. And at the end, it's so happy. A friend of mine several years ago called me and said, I lost my job. I'm going through a divorce. I haven't gotten out of bed in 4 days. I'm still in my pajamas. Tell me what to do. And I sat there for a second. And I said, get out of bed and go wash your face. And she went, what? I said, get out of bed and go wash your face. Take one step. And if you want to brush your teeth, great, but one step. And that was all she needed to do, honestly, to start one foot in front of the other. And the great thing was a couple years later, I officiated her and her new husband's wedding. And she shared, I wouldn't be standing here today if I hadn't washed my face.
oh,
So it was really cool that I got to officiate the wedding.
oh,
So
that is amazing. That's, I mean, it's
yeah.
a good, it comes all the way back around. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yes, people can reach me at simple lisabeththomas.com. That's it. And they can find Outwitting Fear. They can find links to Not on Our Watch, Texas Women in Business. All of it is throughout that. So
perfect. And we'll put
if they
that
want to
all in the
call me,
show notes too, so everyone can
yeah,
find it quickly. That's
yeah,
amazing.
awesome. Thank you,
LB,
Wendy.
I
This
love
was
it.
so
You've
much
been,
fun.
yes, definitely. And we will do it again because I want to hear more as everything develops and grows.
Yeah,
We'll definitely
I
stay in
will.
touch.
And if we get to Colorado, I'll let you know. And the next time you say, "Hey, I want to go to Austin," you better let me know.
I will do
And
it.
we will meet up for sure.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you
Awesome.
so much, LB. I
Thank you.
enjoyed today so much. You have a wonderful day and definitely we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
You
Bye.
too.